In the last JJK video on this channel, we talked about the contrast between the selfishness of Sukuna and the selflessness of Yuta. However, something I chose not to mention in that video was the far more important and striking contrast between Sukuna's selfish greed for power and Yuji's selfless sacrifice for others, as is the opposite of true freedom and individual power, not a lone cog in the system, one small part of a greater whole. So if you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell. Anyway, on with the video. Yuji, as we all know, is a person trying to do some good. In accordance to his grandfather's words, he wishes to use whatever power he has to help those people he can. He isn't out here trying to save the world, he just wants to make as much change as he can, even if it is only small. Remember, Yuji was fully content with being executed after eating all of Sukuna's fingers, because he knew by doing so he could save the world and innocent people from Sukuna's wrath, and more importantly, that it was something that only he could do. Well, at least he thought that's what would happen. Yuji's arc in short goes from deciding to help people with his own power, to doing what he can as Sukuna's vessel, dying to save people from Sukuna's wrath, to just becoming a cog. He gets progressively more and more selfless to the point he sees himself as not an individual, but just as a cog, just one part of the overall jujitsu world. He is okay with dying to Choso if it means someone else having an easier time saving Gojo. As he says, he doesn't have to be the one to save Gojo, and in his fight with Mahito, comes to the conclusion he doesn't even need a reason to kill curses, it's just the role he as a cog needs to play. This of course heavily contrasts Sukuna, as although yes, Sukuna is okay with dying, that isn't because he thinks his life's worth only amounts to so much like Yuji, but because he values his own life so highly, and so in turn by risking it gains the greatest of satisfaction. So yes, Sukuna is selfish to the point the only thing that matters to him are his own satisfaction, and those things that can satisfy him. And Yuji is selfless to the point he will let himself die and use his life as a stepping stone for someone else to accomplish a goal worth more than his own life. However, interestingly, the story has again and again showed Yuji's way of thinking as flawed. Take Megami, who only lived up to his potential and gained a domain after switching to a more selfish Sukuna-like mindset. And I think that is true. I don't think merely living as a cog will ever lead Yuji to the same heights as Sukuna, but luckily for Yuji, I don't think this will be what leads to his victory. It is not that he's a cog, but because he is one of many. Sukuna is defined by being an absolute individual, one who lives for only themselves. He fights alone for his own sake. Everything is for just him, the lone individual. And well, what defines nearly every one of Yuji's fights? Well, he jumps his opponents. Yuji unlocked Black Flash, one of the greatest feats of Jujutsu, only through fighting alongside Todo. It is working together, it is cooperativeness that brings out Yuji's greatest strength. Even now all his new abilities seem suited for support rather than one-on-one fighting, and I strongly believe Sukuna's defeat will come from a team effort involving Yuji and Megami, and whatever other riffraff around at the time. You could also point to the fact that Yuji's power-up is quite likely due to him eating the other Death Rune paintings. In other words, he's literally taking on other souls, his power being born from cooperativeness. And the difference to this and what I said about Yuta in the Yuta video is that although Yuta fights for his friends and is powered by friendship, he still fights alone. Well, technically with Rika, but she's tied to his curse technique, so you know what I mean. Yuta basically is trying to replicate Sukuna's approach, but is using selflessness as the fuel for his power, rather than greed and selfishness that Sukuna employs. Yuji though isn't like this though, as unlike Yuta he is weak. Metaphorically so, power scalers don't get my ass. And this is what separates Yuji from the likes of Gojo, Kashimo, Yuta and Sukuna. He is narratively framed as weak. Gojo and Kashimo were both praised by Sukuna because they were the strongest of their respective eras. They had worked for their power and achieved great things. Now Sukuna believed that the two of them were both greedy for reaching those heights, still desiring connection. But greedy or not, he still acknowledged their power by killing them, and he granted them recognition. And although Yuta has not yet come face to face with Sukuna, I'm sure Sukuna would also respect the power he has attained, even if the methods to do so counter his own. But then there is Yuji. Yuji is different. Sukuna sees power and happiness as interlinked. If one wants to be happy, then they should become strong. If you want to fulfill your life, then become strong enough to grab hold of your desires. and so by extension he believes the weak shouldn't object to be ripped apart by those stronger than them. If you accept your weak existence, then you also accept being trampled to death. Everyone in Sukuna's mind has the choice to be weak or become strong, yet Yuji stands opposed to this idea. As his grandfather said to him, everyone should do what they are able to, but only within the bounds of what you can do. You don't need to save everyone, just those when you can. And this is the mindset Yuji brings forward. You can be content with who you are, weak or not, as long as you are making the most of what you have. There is nothing wrong with being weak as long as you are content with who you are. Yuji does not believe the strong can just trample over the weak, which is why he tells Sukuna to go and try see if he can swallow all his suffering, the wording here being particularly of note. As we know, Sukuna sees human lives as meals to consume, and by his own words he eats when he wants to eat. So by Yuji saying he can try but will fail to eat him, he is saying he won't become a simple meal for Sukuna, he won't be a tool for him to gain more satisfaction. He challenges Sukuna's worldview. As well, Yuji is the only one in the series to not see Sukuna as a god. The strong revere him, the weak fear him, but everybody acknowledges his strength. All but one. But Yuji. Yuji just hates his guts. It's nothing more than a simple hatred for not the king of curses, but the bastard Sukuna. There's a reason he just refers to him as a curse. And well, since the entire narrative presents Sukuna as a godlike figure, even going back to chapter 1, literally being named after Sukuna, and the first panel being of the supposed resting place of one of his fingers, then of course the one to beat him must be someone who does not. Something also really cool is when Yuji says he will eat anything to get strong enough to beat Sukuna. He is using the same methods as Sukuna, eating things to make him stronger, but he is not doing so for pleasure or self-satisfaction. It is for his lone pursuit of killing Sukuna, for his mission as a cog to kill the King of Curses. Yuji is still seeing himself as a cog, though instead of fighting to kill cursed spirits as one who can, he is now fighting to kill Sukuna as the only one who can. It's an evolution of the same logic Yuji used at the start of the series. If I am the only one who can eat Sukuna's fingers, and then be killed, then I will do it. And this has now evolved to, if I can be of any help in killing Sukuna, I will do it. Not as the only one who can, but as a simple cog in the process. Also, quick side note at the end of the video, I've just realised after recording this video that like every JJK video I make just kind of loops back around to Sukuna somehow, which it isn't a conscious choice, but I guess it illustrates my point quite well that like everything in this series revolves around Sukuna and he is basically the god of this world. So I think that helps illustrate my point that just subconsciously every JJK video I make just loops around to be talking about Sukuna. So yeah, just wanted to add that at the end of the video before people complain about how this is just the same video as the last few, because yeah, they're all just about Sukuna. And if you want to support this channel even further, then perhaps pledge to my Patreon or become a channel member so you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, Rinjak9696, General Tonyos, Mr. Sputum and Matthias Rowett. So with all that said and done, I've been Seth the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.